Neon, pink finishes, pointy headstocks, Floyd Rose tremolo bars, and fretboard gymnastics that looked more like an Olympic sport than a musical performance. That was the 1980s shred guitar in a single sentence. Now look at a modern metal guitar. Matte black finish, fanned frets, eight strings, and a fixed bridge built for down-tuned chugging in drop F. On the surface, these two instruments could not look more different. But the engineering underneath tells a completely different story, and it is one that most guitarists have never actually examined. The shred guitar as we know it started in a small workshop in San Dimas, California in the late 1970s. Grover Jackson and Wayne Charvel were modifying Fender Stratocaster bodies, shaving down the necks to ultra-thin profiles, installing hotter pickups, and adding a tremolo system invented by a machinist named Floyd Rose. That tremolo used locking nuts and fine tuners at the bridge to keep a guitar in tune even after extreme whammy bar abuse, and Floyd Rose patented the design in 1977. But the person who turned that workshop experiment into a cultural explosion was Eddie Van Halen. When Van Halen's debut album landed in 1978, Eddie was playing a homemade guitar built from a Charvel Stratocaster body and a Fender neck with a Gibson PEF humbucker jammed into the bridge position. That guitar, the Frankenstrat, with its stripped red, white, and black paint job, became the blueprint for an entirely new category of instrument. The superstrat was born. Take a Stratocaster shape, give it a thinner neck, bigger frets, a humbucker in the bridge, and a Floyd Rose tremolo. That formula launched an entire decade of guitar design. By the mid-1980s, the superstrat arms race was in full swing. Jackson guitars released the Soloist and the Dinky with their distinctive pointed headstocks. Charvel was cranking out neon-finished bolt-on neck guitars. Kramer guitars became one of the best-selling brands in America, largely on the strength of Eddie Van Halen's endorsement. The guitars were loud, visually aggressive, and designed from the ground up for one purpose: playing fast. Ibanez raised the stakes in 1987 when they launched the GEM series with Steve Vai. The GM 777 had a scalloped body cutaway called the Lion's Claw Tremolo Cavity, a monkey grip handle carved into the body, and a vine inlay running the full length of the fretboard. It came in colors like Loch Ness green and desert sun yellow. The aesthetics were as extreme as the playing, and that was the entire point. In the MTV era, a guitar was not just a musical instrument. It was a visual statement broadcasting from a television screen in every living room in America. The technical features that defined 80s shred guitars were consistent across brands. Thin neck profiles, usually between 19 and 20 millimeters at the first fret, designed for speed. Jumbo frets, typically 6100 series wire, allowing lighter finger pressure and faster hammer-ons and pull-offs. Compound radius fretboards that flattened out from a rounder 9.5 inches at the nut to a flatter 14 or 16 inches near the body joint, making both chording and soloing comfortable on the same instrument. And of course, the Floyd Rose double-locking tremolo system on nearly every serious shred guitar made between 1983 and 1992. The pickups of the era tell their own story. The DiMarzio Super Distortion, one of the first aftermarket pickups ever made, became the hot rodding standard of the late 1970s and early 1980s. Seymour Duncan released the JB model, which became the single best-selling guitar pickup in history. These were high-output passive pickups wound with more coil turns than vintage designs, pushing the front end of tube amplifiers harder to produce. Singing, sustain, and harmonic feedback at high gain settings. So that was the 80s shred guitar, a Stratocaster shape reimagined for speed, wrapped in neon, and loaded with a Floyd Rose and a hot pickup. It was flashy, it was excessive, and it was perfectly calibrated for its cultural moment. Then grunge happened. And almost overnight, everything changed. When Nirvana broke through in 1991, the entire aesthetic of rock guitar flipped on its head. Kurt Cobain played a beaten-up Fender Jaguar and cheap Univox guitars. He did not shred, he did not use a Floyd Rose, he could barely keep his guitar in tune, and that was part of the appeal. The 1990s rejected shred culture with the force of a cultural correction. Pointy headstocks became embarrassing. Neon finishes disappeared. Guitar solos were suddenly uncool. But something more interesting was happening in the metal underground. A band from Bakersfield, California called Korn was about to rewrite the rules of heavy guitar tone. Korn's guitarists, Monkey and Head, started using Ibanez 7-string guitars tuned down to a full octave below concert pitch standard tuning. The extra low string opened up a register that 6-string guitars simply could not reach. And the detuned heaviness of Korn's debut album in 1994 created a seismic shift in what metal guitar needed to be. Ibanez had actually built the first production 7-string guitar in 1990, the Universe series, designed with Steve Vai, but it was Korn, not Vai, who turned the 7-string from a curiosity into a genre-defining instrument. The irony is thick. The shred community invented the 7-string, and the anti-shred movement made it essential. Through the late 1990s and the 2000s, metal guitar aesthetics stripped down completely. Matte finishes replaced sparkle paint jobs. Fixed bridges replaced Floyd Rose tremolos. Active EMG pickups replaced the passive DiMarzios and Seymour Duncans that had dominated the shred era. The EMG 81 active pickup became the default choice for metal guitarists because it delivered a tight, compressed, high-output signal that was perfect for heavily distorted rhythm playing with extreme precision. If you are finding this helpful, hit subscribe. We cover the real history and engineering behind guitar gear every week. Now let us get into what actually changed under the surface. Here is the part that might surprise you. If you strip the finish off a 1987 Ibanez RG550 and a 2024 Ibanez RG Genesis, the core construction would look remarkably similar. Both use a double cutaway body shape. Both feature bolt-on maple necks. Both have thin profiles designed for fast playing. The fundamental superstrat formula that Charvel and Jackson invented in the early 1980s is still the skeleton underneath almost every modern metal guitar. The real differences between eras are not in the broad design strokes. They are in the details that most guitarists never think about. Scale length is one of the most significant changes. Standard 80s shred guitars used a 25.5-inch scale length, the same as a Fender Stratocaster. That scale length works beautifully for standard tuning and even drop D. But when you start tuning down to drop B or drop A on a 7 or 8 string instrument, a 25.5-inch scale length produces floppy, unfocused string tension. Modern metal guitars routinely use 26.5-inch or 27-inch scale lengths to maintain tight string tension in lower tunings. Some extended range instruments push to 28 inches or beyond. The innovation that pushed this even further is the multiscale or fan fret design. Companies like Strandberg in Sweden and Dingwall in Canada pioneered production instruments where the bass strings sit on a longer scale length and the treble strings on a shorter one, fanning the frets at an angle across the fretboard. This gives you tight, defined low notes and comfortable, familiar tension on the high strings simultaneously. A fanned fret 8-string guitar can deliver crushing low-end clarity on the 8th string while still feeling like a normal guitar on the 1st string. This design was virtually non-existent in the 1980s, and it has become one of the defining features of modern metal guitar construction. Manufacturing precision is another invisible revolution. In the 1980s, most guitar bodies and necks were shaped using hand-guided router templates and manual sanding. A skilled luthier could produce excellent results, but there was inherent variation between individual instruments. Two 1987 Jackson soloists built in the same week might have slightly different neck profiles, body contours, and fret placement. Modern CNC machining has tightened those tolerances to fractions of a millimeter. A Kiesel guitar built in San Diego today is machined with the same precision as aerospace components, and the consistency from instrument to instrument is nearly perfect. But if you asked most guitarists what the biggest tonal difference is between an 80s shred guitar and a modern metal guitar, the honest answer should be the pickups. Not the body wood, not the neck joint, not the bridge hardware. The pickups. An 80s shred guitar loaded with a Seymour Duncan JB in the bridge. And a jazz in the neck produces a specific set of harmonic characteristics. The JB is a hot, passive pickup wound to about 16,000 turns of coil wire around an Alnico 5 magnet. It emphasizes upper mid-range harmonics, giving it that singing vocal quality that soars during lead playing. That is the sound of 80s shred, a modern metal guitar loaded with a EMG 81 active pickup in the bridge produces a fundamentally different harmonic profile. The active preamp inside the pickup compresses the signal and delivers a tight, scooped output that emphasizes low-end thump and high-end articulation while cutting the mid-range. That is the sound of modern metal rhythm playing. The same guitar body, the same neck, the same amplifier, but a completely different pickup will change the tonal character more dramatically than any other single variable. And the pickup landscape keeps evolving. Fishman Fluence pickups, introduced in the 2010s, use a multi-layer circuit board instead of traditional copper wire coils, allowing a single pickup to switch between voiced characters at the push of a button. Bare knuckle pickups in the United Kingdom. Hand ones, custom designs, targeting specific frequency responses for modern metal, progressive rock, and vintage tones. The pickup market today is more sophisticated and more competitive than at any point in guitar history. The Floyd Rose question remains the most emotionally charged debate in all of this. In the 1980s, the Floyd Rose was non-negotiable if you wanted to be taken seriously as a shred guitarist. Dive bombs, flutter effects, harmonic squeals, and extreme pitch manipulation were core techniques for players like Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, and Eddie Van Halen. The Floyd Rose made those techniques possible, and no other tremolo system offered the same tuning stability under that kind of abuse. But Floyd Rose tremolos come with real practical costs. Changing strings requires loosening the locking nut, cutting the ball ends off the strings, clamping them into the bridge saddles, stretching them, locking the nut again, and fine-tuning with the bridge adjusters. A string change that takes 3 minutes on a fixed bridge guitar takes 15 minutes on a Floyd Rose. Changing tunings between songs during a live performance is essentially impossible. And if a string breaks mid-set, the entire bridge shifts out of balance and every remaining string goes out of tune. Modern metal players weighed those trade-offs and made a practical decision. Fixed bridges are simpler, more stable, and allow faster tuning changes. Most modern metal does not use dramatic tremolo techniques, so the Floyd Rose became unnecessary weight. The shift was not about the Floyd Rose being bad, it was about the music no longer requiring what it does. So what is the real difference between an 80s shred guitar and a modern metal guitar? It is smaller than the aesthetics suggest. The core superstrat architecture remains intact. The body shapes have evolved but are still rooted in the same double cutaway ergonomic template. What actually changed is scale length, pickup technology, manufacturing precision, and the shift from floating tremolo systems to fixed bridges. Those are real engineering differences, but they are measured in inches of scale length and turns of pickup wire, not in the dramatic visual overhaul that the guitar community pretends defines these two eras. The 80s shred guitar and the modern metal guitar are not rival species. They are the same species adapted to different environments. One is adapted for neon-lit stages and Van Halen dive bombs. The other is adapted for studio recordings and down-tuned 8-string chugging. But pull the paint off and the family resemblance is unmistakable The guitar that matters is the one that disappears in your hands and lets you focus on the music.